B'siyata d'shmaya, we're going to learn Moed Katan Daf Chof Aleph. We're going to start 14 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon, Ve'elu dvorim she'ovel osur bohen. The following are things that somebody in mourning is osur, it's prohibited to him. Number one, osur b'melocha. He's not allowed to engage in activities, in work. B'rechitza, he's not allowed to wash himself, or b'sicha, not to anoint himself, or b'tashmish hamita, not to have marital relations, or b'ni'ilas hasandal, or to wear shoes. This is talking about the Shiva period. It's the week of Shiva. V'also likris b'Torah, he's not allowed to learn Torah, Novim, Uksuvim, which is the different chalokim of the written part of the Torah. V'lishnois, or to learn b'Mishnah, b'Medrash, b'Alochis, and b'Ashishas Dorim, which is the Mishnayos, and b'Agodis, and the Agodis of the Torah. All these things he's not allowed to learn. V'im hoyu rabim tzrichim loi. But if he's the type of person that the public need him because he gives them joshus and he teaches them Torah, eino nimna, he does not refrain from teaching Torah. And the reason that one's not allowed to teach Torah is because we actually learned it out earlier on in Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph from a pasuk, but Torah brings a person to have simcha, to have joy, and the time of mourning is a time where a person is supposed to refrain from joy. Umaisa, there was an incident. Umais benoisha Rabbi Yosi b'Tzipuri. Rabbi Yosi's son passed away in Tzipuri. V'nichnas lebeis hamedrash, and nonetheless, Rabbi Yosi went into the beis hamedrash v'dorash kol hayom kulo, and he taught Torah the entire day because the public, all the people in the beis hamedrash, they were relying on him to teach them Torah. Rabbi bar Chona, Isra bei Milsa. An unfortunate incident happened to Rabbi bar Chona, and one of his close relatives passed away. Savar deloyle meifuk lepirka. He assumed that he intended not to come and give his lecture, not to give his shir into the public. Amalei Rav Chanina said to Rabbi bar Chona, Im hoyu rabim tzrichim loi, if the public need you to teach them Torah, einu nimna, one does not refrain from teaching Torah. It was typical that the Rav, the one who was giving the shir, would speak in his natural, in a low tone, and there would be a speaker, somebody who would say over to the public what he was saying. So Rabbi bar Chona was going to position, as he usually did, an Amira, somebody who was going to be a speaker for him, a Turgamon, a translator. Omali Rav. So Rav told him, Tanya, that we learnt in a Braisa, Turgamon. It's true that if the public need you, you're allowed to teach them Torah, but it shouldn't be in a regular, usual manner as if business as usual, and you should not position a Turgamon, a translator. Of it. So what should he do? How's he going to teach his lecture, his shir? Tanya, Maisa umeis benoisha Rabbi Yehuda bar Iloi. The son of Rabbi Yehuda bar Iloi passed away. V'nichnas lebeis hamedrash, and Rabbi Yehuda bar Iloi came into the beis hamedrash. V'nichnas Reb Chananya ben Akavyo. Reb Chananya ben Akavyo came in, v'yoshav b'tzidoi, and sat next to Rabbi Yehuda bar Iloi. V'lochash hu, and Rabbi Yehuda bar Iloi, he, in a low tone, he whispered the shir, the content of Divrei Torah, Reb Chananya ben Akavyo, to the one who walked in with him, Reb Chananya ben Akavyo. The Reb Chananya ben Akavyo, Turgamon, and Reb Chananya ben Akavyo, he then said it over to the translator, to the one who was going to be the Amoira, the speaker, so to speak, the Turgamon, Hishmiel Rabim, and it was this Turgamon who would then say the shir to the entire public. Which means that it shouldn't be directly from the person in mourning to the Amoira, to the Turgamon, rather there should be somebody in between. Continues the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon. Ovel, somebody in mourning, one of his close relatives had passed away. Shkimel Yomim Arishonim, the first 3 days, Osur laniach tefillin, one doesn't wear tefillin. And this is learnt out from a pasuk from by Cheskel. Mishlishi ve'elach v'shlishi b'chlal. From the third day, including the third day, mutar laniach tefillin, you're allowed to put on tefillin, which means that he holds that the main severe period of mourning is just 2 days. Those first 2 days, don't put on tefillin. The third day, you can put on tefillin. If new people come to console him on that third day, and they don't know if it's day 3 or day 1 and 2, and they're going to see him with tefillin on, they might think, what's going on here? This is day 1, day 2, why are you wearing tefillin? He does not need to be concerned. He does not need to take his tefillin off, and he's allowed to keep them on. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua argues and says, number one, Ovel, Shnei Yomim Arishonim Osur laniach tefillin. It's just 2 days you don't wear tefillin, and misheni v'sheni bichlal, which means that really it's just 1 day you don't wear tefillin. On the second day, from the second day and on, including the second day, you are allowed to wear tefillin, because Rabbi Yeshua holds that the main severe period of mourning is just 1 day. We'll soon see where they learn it from. However, Rabbi Yeshua holds that if new people are going to come on this day too, and they don't know if it's day 1 or day 2, you should remove your tefillin when they come in, and because they might not realize that it's day 2. Omer of Masna. Rav Masna says, "My Talmud Rabbi Eliezer. What would be the source for Rabbi Eliezer that the main mourning period is 2 days? Because it says in the pasuk, in the Chumash, Vayivku b'nei Yisrael es Moshe, when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, Klal Yisrael, they cried over Moshe Rabbeinu, ba'arvei smoyav shloishim yoim, vayitmu yemei b'chi evel Moshe. The days of mourning passed and ended. So you see here that it's yemei, it's days of the crying. Days, the minimum of the plural is 2. From there you learn that the main severe time of mourning is 2 days. Omer of Eina. Rav Eina said, my Talmud Rabbi Yeshua. What would be the source for Rabbi Yeshua that the main mourning, the severe mourning period is just 1 day? It's a pasuk in Amos, and we've seen part of this pasuk before. The pasuk starts, "V'afachti chageichem le'evel." We learnt about this in a previous daf. V'chol shireichem lekino v'ha'aleisi al kol mosnaim sok v'al kol roish korcho v'samtiha ke'evel yochid. And the end of the pasuk says, "V'acharisa keyoim mar." That the end is going to be like her end is going to be like a bitter day in plural. So you see, there's 1 day of bitterness, 1 day of mourning. It's just 1 day. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua, Nami Hoksiv. Does Rabbi Yeshua not know that the other pasuk that says Vayitzmu Yemei B'chi Evel Moshe? So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua will tell you that Shani Moshe the Tokif Ovle. Moshe Rabbeinu was different. It was a very intense mourning. He was Moshe Rabbeinu with everything we know about Moshe Rabbeinu, and over there it was more than 1 day. But anyone else, it's just 1 day. Rabbi Eliezer, Nami Yoksiv Achrisak Yemar. Rabbi Eliezer, who learns out from the pasuk by Moshe Rabbeinu that always mourning is 2 days, what's he doing with the pasuk in Amos that says V'achrisak Yemar, just 1 day? So it answers the Gemara. Ikar Marira Chad Yemahu. It's true that it's 2 days, but the main bitterness is just that 1 day. Omar Ula. Now Ula says Halacha Rabbi Eliezer b'chalitza. The halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer, that we're not concerned about people who are coming in. Rabbi Eliezer said that on day 3 you can put on tefillin, and you don't need to be concerned about other people. The halacha is that regarding removing the tefillin, we rule like Rabbi Eliezer, you don't need to be concerned. V'halacha Rabbi Yeshua b'hanocha. But the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua regarding the days you put tefillin on. Rabbi Eliezer says you don't put tefillin on for the first 2 days. Rabbi Yeshua says you only don't put tefillin on the first day. On the second day you do. So now we have a bit of an issue that I can put on tefillin like Rabbi Yeshua, which is, I can already put it on day 2, and I don't need to take the tefillin off like Rabbi Eliezer, but that's only on day 3. But what's the halacha regarding, that means, how are we getting out of this bind of, I'm allowed to put, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you're not allowed to put on tefillin on day 2. We're allowed to put on tefillin on day 2 because we rule like Rabbi Yeshua. But Rabbi Yeshua says if people come in, you don't need to take your tefillin off. You do need to take your tefillin off. Rabbi Eliezer says you don't take it off. So from day 3, we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. Because Rabbi Eliezer says from day 3, you don't take your tefillin off when new people come in. What's with day 2 when new people are coming in? You can't say we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer because Rabbi Eliezer is on day 3. You can't say paskin like Rabbi Yeshua because according to Rabbi Yeshua, you do need to be concerned about people coming in. So what's the issue? The Gemara is going to now ask this. B'sheni, on this second day, le'ula, according to Ula, the Ula just now said that halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer b'chalitza and Rabbi Yeshua b'hanocha. Chayletz or ye'ena chayletz. On this second day, you take off the tefillin when new people come in or not. Tashma Omar Ula. Ula himself said, Chayletz umaniach afilu mea pa'omim. Now this can't be talking about on day 3, because on day 3, Katana didon do Omar shloisha. Did Rava not say before on Daf Chof Amud Aleph regarding the halacha of turning over the bed that he said that the main avelus, the main mourning period, is actually the first 3 days? So why over here don't we say, how can Rava say that Kivan Shehiniach Shuvei Neicheletz? Does he not say that the main mourning period regarding tefillin, putting on tefillin, you shouldn't be able to put on tefillin for the first 3 days? Rava himself says the Gemara, no. It's true that in many areas and many restrictions, according to Rava, the first 3 days are more intense halachas. But here, putting on tefillin is a mitzvah shani. Since we're talking about tefillin, Rava says the mitzvah, no. On day 2 you can put them on, and once you put them on, you do not need to take them off. As Rava said here, Kivan Sheiniach Shuv Einoi Choletz. Continues the Gemara Tanu Rabbanon. Ovel Gimel Yomim Arishonim Osu B'Melacha. An ovel is not allowed to do work, activities, the first 3 days of his mourning period. Vafilu oni, even a poor man, hamisparnis min tzedakah, who's living off charity, he's not allowed to do work. Mikan ve'elach, from after the first 3 days, oisa betzino, he's allowed to work in a secluded place, in the quiet, b'seich beisa, in his house. V'ha'isha, if a woman is in shiva, is mourning, and she is allowed to be after third day, then tova b'pelach, she can spin the materials with a spindle b'seich beisa, in her house. If she's very poor and she needs money to be able to buy food and to live off. Tanu Rabbanon, oval, another brisa. Oval shleishi yomim arishonim, the first 3 days of the shiva. Einoi hoilech lebeisa oval. He doesn't leave his home of mourning to go and console and offer condolences to a different oval in a different house. Mikan ve'elech, after 3 days, hoilech, he's allowed to go. Ve'ena yeshuv b'mkoim hamenachmim. He doesn't go and doesn't sit where all those people who are the consolers, where they are. No. Elo b'mokim hamisnachmim, he sits close to the people who are themselves mourning. In that other home, he can go there and join them. Another brayso Tanu Rabbanon, oval gimel yomim arishonim, the first 3 days of avelus, osur b'she'elas sholem, he's not allowed to greet anyone. Mishloisho val shiva, from the 3rd day to the 7th day, if somebody greeted him, meishiv, he can respond. Ve'ein shel, but he should not initiate a greeting. Mikan ve'elach, at the end of shiva, even though it's shloishim, shoyel or meishiv kedarko, he's allowed to greet people and respond to greetings in a normal manner. Shloisha yomim arishonim, also b'she'elas sholim. So now the Gemara is discussing what we just learned. We just learned in that brisa that the first 3 days you're not allowed to greet anyone, irrespective of whether you greet them or whether you're responding to a greeting from them. Asks the Gemara Vatani, did we not learn in a brisa? Ma'isa or meisu bonov shel Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lost a child. Bonov seems to be more than one. It's a discussion whether it should say bnoi or bonov, but Rabbi Akiva was sitting shiva for his son. Nichnasu kol Yisrael, the entire Klal Yisrael came with spidum hesped godel and eulogized him, a very big hesped to this in front of Rabbi Akiva. B'shas Petiros, and when they took leave of the Hespedim, Omad Rabbi Akiva al Safsel Godel. Rabbi Akiva stood on a very large bench, V'omar, and said as follows: Achenu b'nei Yisrael, my brothers Klal Yisrael, Shimu here, Afilu shnei bonim chasanim. Even though 2 married sons, even if I would have lost 2 married sons, or even though I did lose 2 married sons, menucham hu, I've been consoled. B'shvil kovich asisem, right? I would be consoled with the amount of honor that you're giving me. And v'im b'shvil Akiva basem, and I'm taking it for granted that you didn't come because my name is Akiva. Harikama Akiva b'shuk. There are many Akivas in the marketplace, and you don't give him so much honor. Elokacha maritem. You obviously told yourselves that, and this is quoting a pasuk in Tehillim, that Torah selikov b'liboy loisim ad ashurov. That the reason you're coming here is because of the Torah that I learned. And the Torah, it's Hashem that I have in my heart. So so you get even a double reward because you're coming to honor the Torah. Go to your homes in peace. So here it says, this was Rabbi Akiva, who was the beginning of the Shiva. It was the first 3 days, and he was greeting them. How can you do that? Did we not just learn in the Brisa, Gimel Yomim Rishonim, Osur B'She'elas Sholim? Answers the Gemara, Kovid Rabim Shani. He was giving honor to the public, the large crowds that came to honor him and his Torah, there you're allowed to greet them, and you're allowed to greet them even at the beginning of Shiva. But if it's not Kovod Rabbim, the honor to the public, then it would be Asa. Continues the Gemara, a quote from the next phrase in that brisa, Megimel va'ad Zayin, from the third day to the seventh day of Shiva, Meishiv, you can respond if somebody greets him. Ve'ena Sheil, but he should not initiate a greeting. Mikan ve'elech, after the Shiva, Sheil o Meishiv kedarkoi, he can greet and be greeted and respond to a greeting as usual. Asks the Gemara Uruminu. We're asking a contradiction from a brisa. It says in Masechet Moed Katan, if somebody finds his friend Ovil in mourning within the shloshim, which is after the end of the Shiva, he's allowed to speak with him, tanchumim, to try and console him and offer words of condolences. But you should not greet him. You shouldn't ask him how he's doing in how b'shloimei, which is a greeting. After 30 days, after the end of the shloshim, only then, shoyel b'shloimei, you can ask him how he is. And after the shloshim, you should not speak to him anything about tanchumin. You shouldn't console him after 30 days. And we're going to get back to that in a few lines, because that's something which is going to be discussed. But continues the brisa, Meisa ishtoi, if somebody's wife passed away, v'nosa isha acheres, and he in the meantime, even though it's in shloshim, he's already married another wife, he should not go into this person's house where he's got a new wife and console him. However, if you find him in the marketplace, just quietly you can say to him, you can console him, and with a certain seriousness. So what do we see in this brisa? We see in this brisa that even in the shloshim, you're not allowed to greet somebody who's an oval. So how could you say before that Megimel va'ad Zayin till the end of Shiva, Meishiv ve'enoi shoyel, Mikan ve'elech shoyel o Meishiv kedarkoi, that after the Shiva, even though it's shloshim, you can greet somebody as usual. Over here it says that explicitly in the brisa that even after the Shiva, it's talking about B'soich Lamed, you shouldn't be shoyel b'shloimei. Answers the Gemara, Omer Avidi bar Ovin, Hu shoyel b'shloim achirim. Then what it means is he is allowed to, when we said before that after the shloshim, shoyel o Meishiv kedarkoi, that means him greeting somebody else. Why? Why should he be able to greet somebody else? Shachirim shloim b'sholim, because everybody else is in peace. They didn't lose a relative. And therefore, after the Shiva, greet them, because their lives haven't been turned upside down. They're in Sholim, you can greet them. Acherim, however, others, because it's still Shloshim, ain't Sholim b'shloimoi. They should not greet this oval, Shehu einei shari b'sholim, because he's not in such a Sholim place. He's just lost a close relative. So the Gemara says, so that first brisa that says that Migimel va'ad Zayin till the end of Shiva, einei shoyel, Meishiv ve'enoi shoyel, he can respond and not greet. Mikan ve'elech shoyel o Meishiv kedarkoi. And you said that's talking about others greeting him. But it says here shoyel u'meishiv kedarkoi. I can understand that he can be shoyel. But what about the meishiv? Meishiv means that he can respond to their greetings. V'hamidik toni meishiv, from the very fact that it says he can greet others, michlal deshailin only. Not that he can greet others, he can respond to their greetings. It would seem that others are allowed to greet him. And you just said now that when regarding others greeting him, that's where the second brisa says, Ve'ena she'el b'shloimei. Says the Gemara, no. There's no proof from there. He's allowed to ask others sholim, because he's after the Shiva, he's just in shloshim, and for others it's sholim, you can greet them. They are not allowed to greet the oval. So how can you respond to greetings? They didn't know that he was an oval. They didn't know he was an oval, didn't know he was in shloshim, and therefore they greeted him by mistake. But since it's after the Shiva, he's allowed to respond back. I mean, that's right. And not only is he allowed to respond back, he's even allowed to greet them. But there's no proof here that they were allowed to greet him, they just didn't realize. Asks the Gemara, if so, Hosam Nami, when you're talking about within the first 3 days, why are you saying that Oval Gimel Yomim Rishonim Osa B'Shelas Sholim Mishloisha Vat Shiva Meishiv Einei Sheil? You're saying that after day 3, from day 3 and on, over there, you can respond to somebody who greeted you by mistake. But the first 3 days, it seems you can't do that. Well, if he greeted you by mistake, why can't you respond? Answers the Gemara, Hosam Moed Katan. Because if he greeted you by mistake, don't respond by saying greetings. Tell him that don't answer him, don't greet him back. Just tell him, I'm in the first 3 days of mourning, I'm not allowed to greet you. However, after the third day, from the third day, that you do not need to inform him that this person is in mourning. No. If this person by mistake greets an oval after 3 days, the oval is allowed to respond and doesn't need to say, I can't respond, I can't greet you because I'm in mourning, as he would for the first 3 days. No, he can just say that, he can just respond. And now the Gemara is coming back to what we saw before. We saw before, in that second brisa, it says that after Lamed Yom, after the end of the Shloshim, Shoyel b'shloimoi, he's allowed to greet, you can greet him, and you should not console him. Or Raminu asks the Gemara, you're telling me don't console somebody who's lost a relative after the Shloshim? Did we not learn in the Brisa, also in Masechet Moed Katan, if somebody finds his friend who's in mourning, within 12 months from when a relative of his passed away, you should speak to him words of consolence, and don't greet him. After 12 months are over, then you can already greet him. And after that, you do not speak words of condolences. You can console him like in an indirect way. Don't mention the name of the deceased, but just say, just to console him. So it continues the Brisa. Somebody finds his friend in mourning, and it's after 12 months from when his relative passed away, and he does speak to him, tanchumin. What is he compared to? If somebody broke his leg, and now his leg is healed, and then a doctor comes and says to him, and he says, come to me, because I'm very good at this. I'll show you. I'll break your leg, and then I'll heal it, and kadesha teda, and then you'll know shesamamonim shli yofim. In order, you'll see that my remedies are very fine. So come to me. I'll break your leg, and I'll show you how good I am at fixing them. You tell him, no, it's been healed. I don't need your services. So too, once somebody's been healed, he's been through his 12 months of mourning, you should not console him anymore after that. But you see from here that for the whole 12 months you don't console somebody. How could you say before that after the Zayin Yomim, after the Shloshim, how can you say before that after the Shloshim, then you can just speak to him regularly and don't offer him tanchumin, as we saw before, says the Gemara, Loi Kasha, it's not a question. Other relatives, brother, sister, son, daughter, wife, there it's only till the end of Shloshim. For a parent, a father, mother, it's a whole year. Hasam nami, now the Gemara is saying, Hasam nami yidaber imoy tanchumin min hatzad. In the same way as we said before, that after 12 months for a parent, we said, La'achayut beis chodesh, shoyel b'shloimei ve'emenoi medaber imoy tanchumin, aval medaber imoy min hatzad. So why don't you say the same is going to be for any other relatives with after the Shloshim? Why do you just say ve'emenoi medaber imoy tanchumin? Say that you can give him tanchumin min hatzad in an indirect way. Says the Gemara Nochanam, you're 100% right. When it said before that you shouldn't console him, you shouldn't give him tanchumin, it means kedarkoi. In a regular fashion, you shouldn't do it. But it's not to exclude that you can console him without directly mentioning the name of the deceased, and that is okay. And in Mirz Hashem in the next year, we're going to continue from here.